It's such an odd album because it's out of time and out of sync. If you actually look at the early Bowie albums, by the time he got to The Man Who Sold the World, he'd really gone into his stride with a heavy sound. And then he took a complete directional change with Hunky Dory, which in a way should have come before The Man Who Sold the World, because The Man Who Sold the World led on to Ziggy Stardust. Hunky Dory has such a diversity of style. It's got the musical element in there. It's got the acoustic element in there as well as the heavy stuff.
Well, I'd done Man Who Sold the World album before that with Mick and Tony Visconti on bass. So for us, that was the start, really. That was the start of, I guess, really getting used to Bowie's writing and some of the strange chord sequences and time signatures, just getting familiar with how he wrote. It wasn't what you normally expected.
By the time Hunky Dory came along, that was the album that set him up. It put him on a roll, and I think that was the one that people genuinely think of as being the start of his career.
So I didn't want the drums just to be a rock and roll bash behind a symphony orchestra. So I had to think with the arrangement and work out how can I emphasize it rock-wise and classical-wise. So it would be, rather than doing a drum fill of da 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 on tom-toms, I'd do it on hi-hats and snare, which I hadn't heard anybody do that. So, but you had to get it really tight and make it heavy at the same time. So it was ba 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 bush, like that. So it was little differences like that.
You had 3 classic tracks on there: Changes, Oh You Pretty Things, and Life on Mars. And those 3 alone justify the title classic when you refer to the Hunky Dory album. So yeah, I guess you would say that Hunky Dory probably was the one that really put him on the international map.
Hey, no, no. Didn't know what time it was and the lights were low. I leaned back on my radio. Some cat was laying down some get it on rock and roll, he said. Then the loud sound, it seemed to fade. Came back like a slow voice on a wave of phase. That were no DJ.
Bowie is keen on writing in the key of F. I think it's a lot of writers who are basic guitar players find a key that suits them, and it suits his voice.
It's a perfect intro, really, the guitar, because it's nice sounding, but it's really not what you want. It's like it impinges on you because it's, come on, get on with it.
Starman is one of Bowie's great songs. Again, it's one of those soaring, wonderful songs that builds so beautifully. And because it builds from an acoustic intro that's very laid back and understated, what happens at the end, it even makes more impact.
The intro fill I still like playing it. It's sort of a flam on 2 toms onto a snare, and it's just not something you would normally do. I've not heard anybody else do it, and it just really kicks in nice.
The intro of Starman can be quite disturbing to a trained musician's ear. He was fond of just leaving strings ringing open, and it starts with a B-flat chord played on the acoustic guitar at the first position, with the E and the A strings gaily ringing open, and he doesn't seem to give a monkeys about that. And then it goes back to an F chord with the bottom E string ringing open, as it did on Space Oddity.
There's a starman waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'd blow our minds. And there's a starman waiting in the sky. He told us not to blow it, cause he knows it's all worthwhile. He told me, let the children use it, let the children use it, let all the children boogie.
He'd been to the States and he'd got involved with Lou Reed, and he'd watched a few of the American bands. Iggy Pop was a big influence, and I think what he tried to create was an American type of sound, but with a British band.
The effect is a sort of a disturbing discord that often a lot of contemporary musicians would not go for that sort of thing. And I think that's where there is a huge appeal in a lot of Bowie's writing, that he didn't do what was conventional. It certainly is an unconventional intro, so that when it actually goes into the song, which is very, very normal in actual fact, and you think of the chorus is almost twee. I think the intro is a great foil to the basic simplicity of the chorus.
The impact's there anyway, but Bowie was great at building things. It's almost that he had a cinematic vision sometimes as a song. It's the old thing about build to a climax, and Bowie understood this. It was basically taking you through an episode of a story or a storyline. It's no good coming in and saying, here's the whole story, because that's it, you won't go any further. So he builds it, he keeps you on tenterhooks. Where's it going to go? How's it going to develop? And because Starman also has such a wonderful epic feel to it, by the time it reaches its climax, its crescendo, you're thoroughly involved with it. And it's wonderfully clever the way that he could do something like that. And if you think about the other bands at the time, he was doing something similar maybe to a Led Zeppelin on the one hand and a Velvet Underground on the other, but he was telling a story through music, through notes, and he understood how you tell a story.
Mick Ronson was a genius guitarist, very underrated. Everyone these days talks about Jimmy Page or, well, I mean, so many people. Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, Eric Clapton, all these kind of classic guitar heroes. People don't talk about Mick Ronson in the same breath, and I'd say he was at least as influential as all of those.
Mick Ronson was a fantastic guitarist. He wasn't just a trash rock guitarist, which he was known for because he inspired so many trash rock musicians over the years. He was very delicate when he needed to be, very fluent, very fluid. He made the guitar speak.
Mick Ronson I rate very, very highly as a guitarist. In fact, I'd say he's one of the most underrated guitarists when people talk of rock music and guitarists within that field.
There's no doubt about it that Mick Ronson was a superb arranger and a very, very good guitarist indeed. Obviously, he's not in the class of somebody, say, of Ritchie Blackmore, who's a unique talent. But as a guitarist, he certainly was able to deliver everything that the music required. But I think his real contribution were in these superb arrangements that he brought to Bowie's compositions.
I think it was a great loss to the rock music world, Mick Ronson's passing. He was the consummate ensemble player. He was great in a band, he could be a great soloist, and he also proved that you don't have to play at 500 miles an hour to be effective.
Mick Ronson is a very underrated musician. It's only because the record didn't say David Bowie and Mick Ronson that he didn't become as big a star as any of those guitar players. Well, not so much a star, but in terms of someone that was talked about then and now as an incredible rock and roll guitar player. As a creative foil, he was incredible for Bowie. He did Bowie the world of good, and they looked so cool together.
And he could cut it live. I saw this with my own eyes, how good he was live. And if anyone has the Ziggy motion picture album, when he plays his extended solo towards the end of the DVD, it's absolutely riveting.
Again, although he's always praised and hailed, I think a lot of what he did is lost because he's known for one particular style, and of course he went on to work with Ian Hunter as well. I've always felt that Mick Ronson was allowed to in the studio, sadly it never happened now, was allowed to run free and actually bring out all the elements that made him such a talent. He would come up with an album that would surprise a lot of people. Only that could have happened at some point, but he's always known as being the trash rock god, and that's not a bad thing to be actually.